The city sleeps, but some lights never go out. They burn in the quiet apartments of the forgotten, the lonely, the ones who fade into the background. This is a story about one of those lights. It's a story about Arthur Finch, a man who lived and died in an apartment for B, a place as meticulously ordered as his own quiet life. From the outside, it was just another Tuesday. But inside, Tuesday had ended for Arthur. The police found him in his favorite armchair, a book resting in his lap, a cold cup of tea on the table beside him. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. The chain was on the door, locked from the inside. The windows were bolted shut. It was as if Arthur had simply decided to stop breathing. The medical examiner called it natural causes, a heart that just gave up. Case closed. But Detective Miles Corbin couldn't close the case. He was a man who noticed things. He noticed the dust on every surface, except for a perfect, dust-free square on the mantelpiece, as if something had recently been removed. He noticed the way all the paintings in the hallway were slightly crooked, all tilted to the right, except for one, a portrait of a stern-faced ancestor, perfectly level. He noticed a single, long, black hair on the pristine white rug, even though Arthur Finch was bald and gray. Miles kept coming back to the apartment, long after the forensics team had packed up. The silence in the room was deafening, heavier than it should be. It felt occupied. He would sit in the chair opposite Arthur's, trying to see what the old man saw in his final moments. He'd stare at the blank wall, the closed curtains, the locked door. The official report said Arthur was alone, but the apartment disagreed. The apartment whispered secrets in the creaks of the floorboards and the sigh of the radiator. He started digging into Arthur's life, a life that seemed utterly unremarkable. A retired accountant, no family, no friends to speak of. His neighbors described him as a ghost, a polite but distant presence. In the hallway, he never had visitors. Not once. So where did the hair come from? What was taken from the mantelpiece? Why was the door locked so securely? You lock a door like that to keep the world out, or to keep something in? One evening, while sifting through a box of Arthur's old papers, Miles found a diary, not a recent one, but a leather-bound journal from decades ago. The entries were sparse, written in a neat, controlled script. But, as I read, a pattern emerged. Arthur wrote about the visitor, not by name, but as an entity, a shadow that lingered in the corners of his vision, a presence that grew stronger in the silence. The entries became more frantic over time. It's in the reflections, one read. I see it in the polished wood of the floor, in the dark glass of the television screen. It wears my face, but its eyes are wrong. Another entry, years later. I've covered the mirrors, but I can still feel it watching. It wants to get out. It whispers my thoughts back to me, but twisted. It knows my fears. Miles looked around the apartment, seeing it through Arthur's terrified eyes. There were no mirrors. Not a single one. Not in the bathroom. Not on the closet doors. Every reflective surface was gone or covered. But then he remembered the one straight painting in the hall. The portrait of the ancestor. He walked over to it, his heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against his ribs. The painting was perfectly level because it wasn't just hanging. It was hiding something. He carefully lifted the heavy frame off the wall. Behind it, a section of the plaster was darker, newer. He pressed his fingers against it. It was cold. He tapped it, and a hollow echo answered him. Grabbing a letter opener from Arthur's desk, he pried at the edges. The plaster crumbled away, revealing a dark, square cavity. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a small, ornate, silver-backed mirror. Miles hesitated, his own reflection distorted in the tarnished surface. He remembered the diary. It wears my face. He thought about the dust-free square on the mantelpiece. This is where it used to sit. Arthur had it out, and then he put it away. He locked it behind a wall. Why? He picked up the mirror. It was heavier than it looked, and cold, so cold it felt like it was drawing the heat from his hand. He stared into it, at his own tired face. For a moment, nothing happened. And then he saw it. A flicker. In the reflection, his own eyes blinked a fraction of a second too late. A slow, cruel smile spread across his reflected lips, a smile he himself was not making. His reflection's head tilted slightly, an unnervingly curious gesture. He dropped the mirror. It clattered to the floor, but didn't break. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating. The silence was gone, replaced by a low hum that seemed to vibrate in his bones. He could feel it. The presence. The visitor. It wasn't in the mirror anymore. Arthur hadn't been trying to keep an intruder out. He'd been trying to lock his own reflection in. He failed. Miles stumbled back, his hand on his weapon. He looked at the armchair where Arthur Finch had died. He looked at the locked door. He wasn't alone in the room. He had never been alone. He'd been so focused on finding out who was with Arthur, he never stopped to ask what was with him. The visitor wasn't a ghost that haunted the apartment. It was a parasite that haunted the person. And now, it had a new home. He backed Hawaii towards the door, his eyes darting around the room, searching the shadows. But there was nothing to see. The threat wasn't in the shadows. He fumbled with the chain, the deadbolt. The clicks of the lock sounded like gunshots in the oppressive quiet. He pulled the door open and fled into the hallway, not daring to look back. He ran down the stairs and burst out into the night air, gasping. He leaned against the cold brick of the building, his breath coming in ragged clouds. He looked up at the window of apartment for B. The light was still on, and for just a second, he saw a figure standing there, watching him. A tall man in a detective's coat. The figure raised a hand in a slow, deliberate wave. It was his own silhouette. But as it turned from the window, he saw its reflection in the glass, and it was smiling. The case wasn't closed. A new one had just begun. Some doors should never be opened. Some reflections should never be seen. And some visitors never, ever leave.